So we're excited to welcome you to the first in a series of webinars to introduce concepts from around the country that advance conservation and water quality improvements. So this is the first one today. We're going to be talking about Wisconsin's producer-led watershed groups. We also have one scheduled for December 8th to talk about Lancaster County's rapid stream delisting strategy. We're hoping to sneak a third one in there. The logistics are coming together for that. Fingers crossed. And then on January 11th at Delaware Ag Week, we have a listening session planned. That's a breakfast meeting, and we'll be sure to share information out about that as well, where we'll pull together highlights and information from these three webinars and discuss it and explore ways that we might be able to implement some of those ideas here on Delmarva. So just a couple of housekeeping notes that this is a meeting format, not a webinar. So please mute yourself and turn off your camera until we open it up for questions and discussion. And feel free to ask questions in the chat, whether or not we can get to them right away as we go along or when we get to the Q&A session at the end there. But we'll be recording this to share with our partners and online. I know there were some conflicts with today, and I'll be sure to share that out with some folks that I've talked with as well. So I'd like to introduce our two speakers today. So we have Dana Crystal, producer-led watershed protection grant program manager with the Bureau of Land and Water and the Division of Agricultural Resource Management at the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, and Tony Pyrick of TNR Dairy in Watertown, Wisconsin, and a member of the Dodge County Farmers for Healthy Soil, Healthy Water. So they've got about 30 minutes to give their presentation, and then we have the rest of the time for questions and answers. So I'm going to turn it over to Dana and Tony now so that they can get started. And I just appreciate you both so much for being here today.
All right, well, thank you so much, Jen. I'm just going to get my screen shared here. All right, well, good morning, everyone. As Jen said, my name is Dana Crystal, and I'm here this morning with Tony Pyrick. I'm going to jump right into talking about the program, just explaining how it works, some of the history, its growth, how farmers use funds, things like that. And then I will turn it over to Tony, and he can tell you more about himself and his farm and how the producer-led group that he's a part of got started. So let me just minimize this here. Sorry. Okay, so the Producer-Led Watershed Protection Grant Program was started in 2016 here in Wisconsin, with the goal of it being to support farmer-driven local efforts that address water quality improvement. So in order for a group of farmers to apply, there needs to be at least 5 producers in what we call a watershed project area. We don't define how large that area is for the groups. It can be as large as a Huck 8 or as small as a Huck 12 level, or it can be, multiple Huck 12 or Huck 10 watersheds together. We leave that up to the producers to define the area that they're working within. In order to apply, each producer-led group does need to work with what we call a collaborator. So this can be UW Extension. Here in Wisconsin, we call them county land conservation departments. Some other states call them land conservation districts. Could be a member of or a staff person from our Department of Natural Resources, or someone from a nonprofit conservation organization. But the group needs to form a memorandum of understanding with the group, with the collaborator, in order to apply. Oh, and so on the left here, this is the map of our groups. This was 2023. So we just went through a round of 2024 funding, which we'll release that soon.
This is at 3, and I'm just going to head south and try to make decent progress before rush hour kicks in.
Hey, Kristen, please mute yourself. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Sincere apologies.
That's okay. But so as you can see here on the left, these are where all of our groups are scattered throughout the state. So as I said, our first round of funding was in 2016. So this program it's a state-funded program. It was a governor-led budget initiative that was established in our 2015-2017 biennial budget. It received bipartisan support, and it also received a lot of support from some of the big A groups here in Wisconsin. So in the budget, this gave our department, the Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection, grant-making authority, and it started out at $250,000 for each fiscal year in 2016. That's since grown to $1 million. But this authority gave the department ability to implement the program, and we promulgated our rule that made it officially effective in June 2017. So we were operating under an emergency rule in 2016, and then it was a permanent rule come 2017. So you can see here that the program has grown from 14 groups in 2016 to 45 that have been funded over time in 2023. And this year in 2024, we actually received 47 applicants. So our highest year yet. And you can see from our total requests, it is a highly competitive program. These funds are highly sought after from groups as the number of groups continue to grow. So moving now into a little bit of program growth. So just to give you an idea, we do track farmer membership as well as other metrics in the program. Just last year, the program grew to almost 2,000 farmers compared to just 800 in 2021. So again, just tremendous growth each year. And we've been noticing sort of a spider web effect. So where there's existing groups, new groups kind of pop up around where those are established. So we're seeing that some of the established groups, like the group that Tony is a part of, are really helping some of these new groups get started. So last year, we saw more groups popping up in the northern part of the state and some of the southeastern part of the state where it's a little more populated, and those groups are focused on, really preserving farmland in those populated areas. And then this year, we saw more groups in our Lake Michigan, Lakeshore area, kind of in the Fox Valley area. So when groups apply, we're looking at a lot of different metrics, but basically, the review team looks at each applicant and scores them on the viability of their work plan, the anticipated outcomes of the project towards water quality improvement. We look at their communications plan, and then we really look at evidence of farmer commitment, because this needs to be farmer-driven efforts led by farmers, not led by agency. So we really want to look for evidence of that in their applications. And then we also look at existing groups. We evaluate them on their past performance. So we have different criteria for brand new groups versus groups that have been around for a while. So we just have different expectations for each of them. With a brand new group, they're given a little more grace as they get themselves established. So moving now more into, what do groups do with the funding? So the vast majority of the funds are used on conservation incentive programs. So actually putting practices in the ground. The most common incentive program-wide among the groups is cover crops. So whether that's single species cover crops, multi-species cover crops, grazing cover crops, interseeding, things like that. We also have some groups that are focused on different grazing practices. We have some groups that are working on aerial seeding projects. Picture on the left there. I believe that's your group, right?
No, this is the group next to us. That'd be the Lake Country.
Farmers for Lake Country.
Yeah, there's helicopter.
Yeah. So that group, they're working on a watershed scale to coordinate aerial seeding across the watershed. So instead of each farmer planning out their own fields to do aerial seeding, in order to kind of save costs across the watershed, they plan fields across the whole watershed and work as a group in that way. So that's kind of an example of that. We've got some groups that are really working on trying to figure out composting manure and using that in production ag. So just there's a lot of flexibility in how the farmers can design their own incentive programs. We tend to fund things that can't necessarily be funded through like NRCS or maybe some other state programs. That's one of the big draws of this program. We provide the groups some flexibility to try different things, and just be creative with solutions on their farm. So some of the data I'm going to show today is from 2022 because we won't have 2023 data yet until early next year. And then some of it we evaluate on a biannual basis. So we'll have the next set of 2022 and 2023 data again next year. So this is a little bit old, but you can see here program wide, these are some of the top incentive programs that the groups are providing. So cover crops is a big one, no-till, soil testing. We do have groups that are providing grass waterways, pollinator habitat. Then we have sort of this catch-all other incentive programs. And that's where some of those practices come in that, like I said, they're maybe not necessarily funded from some of these other state or federal programs. So then one of the next big things that groups do with funding is education and outreach. So the groups put on a lot of different field days and workshops and things like that to educate, to bring farmers in their community together, bring conservation professionals in their community together, and to educate non-farming individuals on the good things that they're doing on their farm. So on the left here, this is actually several groups up in the northwestern part of the state. They organized a winter workshop and had some different soil demonstrations indoors, and just a nice example of multiple groups working together to put on an educational event. In the middle here, this is a group, the Milwaukee River Clean Farm Families group. They held last year an event at a long-term no-till and cover crop demonstration plot that the county actually owns. So they're working with the county to do this long-term demonstration. And then they regularly host field events to bring farmers in, community members in. And then this one on the right is the Dodge County farmers. They hosted an event, I believe that was last summer, on a farm focused on various different conservation practices. Again, getting people out on the farm, seeing things, farmers interacting with each other. On the left, this is an example of groups in the Southwest working together. So there's multiple groups that put on this event at the local ag research station. So they're working with the university to do multiple different studies that the farmers are interested in. In the middle here, we have a group. This is an agroforestry project or a silvopasture project. There's goats that graze in these woods. And so this brought a lot of different operation types together to learn about that. And then on the right here, we can see we've got soil scientists in the soil pit describing soils and the different impacts of management on what they're seeing in the soil pit. So just some examples of things that the groups are doing, throughout the whole year and annually. And I'd say it's probably even higher than this, but we estimate that the groups are hosting over 130 events each year statewide. So super, super active in education and outreach. And then one thing I wanted to touch on too is just how they're interacting with youth. So on the left here, we have a group. This is our Farmers for the Upper Sugar River group. They are working with it's called the People Program with UW-Madison. So these are first generation college students that come from socially disadvantaged backgrounds. And this is often like their first time on the farm. And so they're working with this program to help them understand different environmental issues and agricultural solutions. They've done this 2 years now. This group in the middle, again, I think this is the Milwaukee River group. They brought a group of interns from Milwaukee, environmental interns from Milwaukee, up to a farm to learn about impact of conservation kind of upstream in the watershed and the impacts of some of the things they're seeing in the city. And then here on the right, this is our Farmers for Mill Creek group. they have a really strong youth education program where they're working with a lot of school age students, elementary age students, to get them to understand conservation and agriculture at a really young age. They bring groups of students out to their farm and things like that. Again, this is a little bit old data, but just to see how well our groups have adapted to different things happening in the world. So in 2020, you can see, the field days kind of shrunk, but that was compensated with other outreach. So whether they were doing webinars or things like that, like they still found ways to interact with each other and carry out their programming. And then you can see in 2021, when things opened up a little more, field days kind of took over again, and workshops and other types of outreach carried on as well. So very adaptive group of farmers that are committed to educating those around them. Groups also do a lot of on-farm demonstrations. So on the left here, we have a group. This is the Biological Farming Friends. They're doing an interseeding demonstration. So a group of people came out to see the equipment that was used, and then they're working with their local land conservation staff to take data that the farmer's then going to use to inform some decision-making on their farm. In the middle, we have the Sauk Soil Water Improvement Group. They're doing a study on mob grazing, working with a nonprofit, looking at some different things that, again, that farmer will then use to inform some of their management decisions. And then on the right here, we have the Red Cedar Conservation Farmers, and they're doing some work with roller crimping. So those are the main things that groups do with funding, but then some groups will use funds to do different work planning or strategic planning exercises. They can use it for water quality testing, so either groundwater or surface water testing, different soil health tests. If they want to engage in watershed planning, working with like a consultant or something like that. Or then we also have groups doing equipment sharing. So like in the middle here, there's a group, these are different types of closing wheels that farmers can rent and try out on their no-till drills. And then on the right here, this is a group, they're engaging in a strategic planning exercise. And so professionals, maybe this doesn't look like a typical strategic planning exercise, but that's kind of the cool thing about this project. The farmers are meeting where they feel is most comfortable and where they're really going to get work done. So whether that's out on the farm or in a shop or wherever it is, doesn't really matter because the work is getting done. So just some spending trends, which might be interesting to this group. This is a really lean program. I think I didn't mention, but so groups are capped at $40,000 per year. And now with it being such a competitive program, many of the requests get cut quite a bit so that we try to keep as many groups in the fold. But that means that a lot of groups aren't getting their full request. So these groups are doing a tremendous amount of work with really small budget every year, as related to as state programming goes. And 80% of those funds are going towards actual practices in the ground. 10% of the funds goes towards administrative costs. So they are allowed to use some funds for staffing and things like that. And then, the rest of it is divvied out with outreach and demonstrations and things like that. So, and then I wanted to just share some data on conservation impact. So we started actually really nailing down and tracking conservation practice acres and trying to do some evaluation on water quality impact in 2019. So you can see here, in 2019, we had just over 400,000 acres of conservation practices implemented through the group's work. And that has grown now in 2022 to just over 1.1 million. So again, just a tremendous amount of work happening with a really small amount of investment, which I think is just a testament to, when when you give that flexibility and let farmers be in the driver's seat, some really good things can happen. So I know this is a really busy slide, and this is more just to show, an example of what we do with some of this data. So we publish a conservation progress report every year, which basically just highlights, it's a highlight, basically a highlight reel of all the accomplishments for the past year. So, this shows that in 2022, again, the growth of the farmer membership, and then we do attempt to do some calculations on, environmental impacts. So we look at soil-based greenhouse gas emissions reductions. We look at tons of soil erosion on farm fields that's reduced, and then pounds of phosphorus entering waterways as well. I won't get into this too much, and I know there's a lot of words on this slide, but something we've also been trying to capture with the impact of the program is just some of the social and community impacts. So on our final reports, we ask a series of questions to kind of get at some of these answers. So we ask, what are some of the areas that farmers in your group have increased their knowledge, skills, or awareness about? And across the program, we've analyzed the answers, and there's groups that answer out from the technical component, that they're learning a specific practice, they're learning through an on-farm demonstration or a research project or something like that. Many groups also note that farmers are learning some different other skill development, so leadership skills, speaking skills, different communication skills. And then many also note attitude changes. So just an increased willingness to learn or changing views on a certain topic. So I'll just pull out some examples here, but some quotes that were in the reports are, our farmers are improving their public speaking and communication skills with different audiences, which is a really important thing when thinking about communicating with farmers versus communicating with non-farmers, different legislators, because we do have groups, legislators that come out to different field days and things like that. So really important in thinking about, how we're advancing conservation. Or another one is, our community is developing more positive views on grazing, changing from thinking it's the old school way of doing things. So just an example of some attitude changes. And then the next question gets at, it's kind of similar, but looking at, community members as well, how they're changing their attitude and perception as a result of, the group existing in the watershed. So on the right here, here's a quote that, some of these fringe practices, such as planting green, planting non-GMO corn, and growing cover crops for forages, are becoming mainstream practices within the group, as well as around the state. And then the other one, people understand that this is a community watershed council, and actions of each affect what happens to other people. What happens on the ridge tops affects what happens in the valley. So just some really neat testaments that, this has impact beyond just the acres that are going into the ground. There are shifts in awareness and attitudes that are happening. And then we ask a question on, what are groups, what is your group focusing on in the future? What's informing your future work? So again, this is just, this is a lot of words, but just showing that these groups are really active and thinking about, how they're going to move forward. So with that concludes my portion, and now I will turn it over to Tony.
Okay, thanks, Dana. It was a great presentation. And I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Tony Pyrick. I farm with my brother and our families. We were a cash crop dairy, 200 cow dairy, 1,100 acres of work ground. We own most of it. We're in South Central Wisconsin. I started our group in 2017 with this, and we're the Dodge County Farmers for Healthy Soil, Healthy Water. And one of the things that was interesting in all these groups, we come up with logos, or you come up with your logo for your group, and it's always interesting. And we have a lot of different logos. Our logo uses the water and the tractor up in the corner. You'll see that. So it's one of the important things that we do in all these groups we have. So We are composed of farmers of Dodge County. When I started the group up, I got involved in a project that they had. The lake associations were really pushing for more stringent rules and regulations of the farmers as far as runoff, and impose buffers and phosphorus getting in their lake, and our county could not mandate that kind of a program. So I was one of the 4 farmers, and with the lake associations and DNRs, sit down for a year and come up with a proposal on how we're going to solve this problem. Well, when I did sit down in 2015, we're starting these farmer-led groups, and I seen how some of the groups that were just starting, how they're impacting the people around them and what they can do. And so I asked for the permission in 2017 to start our group, and with that cap and everything helped. So our mission is improving our community soil and water through conservation practices education. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit and charitable organization, so we can take donations in that, which really helps us out a lot. And we do our programs and research and demonstrations. We've got all kinds of different demonstrations going: water infiltration, NOP, nitrogen optimization program, and a lot of stuff. And we try to outreach, and we have 4 major events a year that are publicized throughout the county and throughout the state. And then we have a lot of pop-up and beer and pizza and farmer shop and that too, to discuss what projects we are doing or want to come up with. These are some of the pictures of our field days. On the left, we usually always in August, we have a good cover crop discussion, get the farmers out there in the afternoon for planting covers after wheat. Wheat, we're starting to get back in a rotation now, so it's a good time to talk to farmers, give them to sit down out in the field and show them the different practices, bring some equipment in to show them, and move from there. On the right, another pop-up session we had before at this fall. So educate. Here's some of the things we do in our group. We go to the county fair, and we have a booth and set up a county fair demonstration, show the people what we're doing, and they can talk to us, which is always important for our county. We get these cover crop boxes we made over the years, and then we can make them portable and take them to the shows or wherever we're at. We have events and show them the different covers, and we label the covers that are on them. Some more of our outreach we do. We got a lot of posters we take along and try to educate the people, and that helps a lot. With that, but I'll get back to this groups and how we started. The DADCAP program is a fantastic program for us. I think without that program, we wouldn't have the participation we do. That funding money that we can get from DADCAP supports us and gets us going. The first year, that was very important to us to get the cover crops going. And this whole DADCAP has set up an organization. We have our annual meeting every year, but it's a community of farmers. All our groups, we get together, we communicate. We have I'd say it's an enjoyable time together. Nobody's competing against each other to do a better job or compete somebody else or do better. We're all out there to improve our soil and help the farmers. And with this program, I don't think we'd be able to do what we do today without a DADCAP program, with that funding to get us going. It's always a good seed money to get us into the education and get our covers established and get our programs going. And from there, we can outreach and get into different grants and different projects we got going. We've got a water infiltration program going with Sand County Foundation. We've got a nitrogen optimization program going now, studying different rates of nitrogen. We've got a cover crop biomass sampling. We got 60-inch corn. We got planting green. We got multi-species cover crops we're planting in that. But this program, I can't say enough about it. It's just a phenomenal program. And like I say, you can see our growth over the years, over 40-some groups already. And we're going to continue to keep going with more and more groups, because it's kind of energizes the farmers. And right now, being involved with this, the years I have been, I got started with covers in 2019 already with the Watershed. So I've been very adamant about no-till and planting covers and get into regenerative agriculture and get our soil built up. And it's just, everybody's interested in it. The thing of it is, we've noticed now that it's going to be education. Farmers want to know why we should be doing this. And a lot of them don't understand why. They think that they did it like their fathers, the tillage, full tillage, use synthetic fertilizer, and have high input costs, and total yield is the answer, which it isn't. And by having these groups and getting our education out there and having the farmers come, and this beer and pizza in the evening at farm shops is always a good idea. At 6 o'clock is some beer and pizza. And we usually get other companies to help fund Compeer. Some financial groups will throw some money in towards us just to get our have some social time in that. And then also our group, we have an annual event every year, a main annual event in February. We get some big name figure. Ed Russell Hedrick here, Dave Brandt, Ray Archuleta, on and on. We're having Vince Blake come this year. We'll bring him into Wisconsin. We share him with 4 or 5 other groups. So we get him in here with a week. He's got a little better time here and a little more economical, and we share him with other groups across our state. But the program itself is just a program that needs to be out there. And it's a model here in Wisconsin that we're proud of. And I'm also very proud of Dana. I knew her when she came up through you started out north of us in Fond du Lac County as the ag agent or the resource agent. And she kind of moved into this position here at DADCAP and then before her. And she's doing a fantastic job here. But it's a program that I can't say enough about. I'm very proud of it. I do a lot of speaking in different areas and help them out here and promote their program and help promote agriculture. So with that, I don't want to hold anybody up, but I know if you got questions, I'm more than willing to answer any questions for you or what you got.
I don't mind kind of taking the lead on facilitating the Q&A. I know Michelle, we've been having some internet trouble, so between the two of us, hopefully we'll be able to do a good job. So I don't know if I had one question that I put in the chat, and I'm happy to open it up for questions, but I'll get us started so that everybody else can kind of prepare. But I was curious, I love this flexibility. I love this concept. I love the producer-driven aspect of this, where you guys are identifying the things that you want to fund and explore and try out. I was wondering how often the groups meet and how often do you kind of revisit how you want to spend money that you have? Like, how does that work in terms of how often are you checking in to like evaluate what you're doing?
It's farther apart. Well, we have, like I say, for our group, we're constantly our 4 major events. We try to do that. We try to evaluate, and with DADCAP, we got to give a summary every year of what we did, and that, which is very important. I mean, you got to have documentation of what you do. Otherwise, this whole farmer-led program is not going to work. And we need documentation, and we need, we can see our progress that energizes farmers to say, hey, we're growing here and there. But it's very important to document and to have that, and then with DADCAP every year, we have a major event, 2-day event, or excuse me, 1-day event, and go through all our projects, and we talk amongst farmers. Everybody's got to participate that's taking grant money for that. So try to communicate together.
Yeah, and I think, each group is different in terms of like the frequency that they meet. Some groups meet quarterly, have a quarterly board meeting. I know you all meet monthly.
Yeah, we meet monthly. We're a monthly, every month we meet, and it's different.
And so our request for proposals goes out at the very beginning of July, and then it's due back to DADCAP by mid-September. And so, during that time, during application time, the groups have to meet, and basically, as part of the application, they have to give us a pretty solid work plan for, what their next year of work is going to look like. So it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, but it seems like groups, kind of figure out a plan for the next year during the summer already, and then, implement it throughout the year. And then, of course, have, their regular board meetings and check-ins with each other as they're trying to deliver their different events. So I'd say that there's pretty frequent contact with most of the groups.
Yeah, so you got a comment on water quality that we're working on. That's a sticky issue that we're going to continue to work on, do well testing, end of tile water testing, and that's kind of one that you don't want to jump into too fast. You can get a lot of people getting too excited about it, but that's one of the things we're working on is water quality. You kind of get well testing and in the field runoff and work onto that. You want to go into that slowly and not scare everybody right away with some of the results. And then if we can improve out in the field, we can show better results there. And when we do start testing, we can see a better quality.
Could I ask a follow-up to that?
Sure.
Is that, just related to that comment, is there a plan down the road to maybe release some sort of water quality report or outcome, maybe 10 years in or something like that?
Yeah. So I'm just looking at the comment now. So actual
It's
water quality.
it hasn't yet, but yeah, we probably should be.
So we do. So we track it through modeling and evaluation. So we look at the practices that the farmers are doing every year, and we do model it with a program here in Wisconsin. It's a state-specific program that we can estimate phosphorus reductions and soil erosion reductions as proxies for water quality. We do have some groups that are focused on like edge of field monitoring to look at things like that. And then we have other groups that are engaging in, like watershed level planning, trying to identify like the hotspot areas, like where should we really concentrate our outreach? Because, through these models, this is what it's showing us where a lot of the loading is coming from. We try to work a little bit with our Department of Natural Resources because we're not necessarily a water sampling agency. But we try to work with the DNR to try to identify, some of the areas that are like TMDL areas or identified as highly loading watersheds in the state. Try to coordinate sampling with those that also have farmer-led activity going on, but we don't have like a statewide sampling effort through the program to look at actual levels in water bodies. We kind of have these various other efforts in place to try to get at some of that, but that's going to take more investment, I think, to get to that place.
We have a lot of good questions coming in through the chat, and so I'm actually going to start from where we left off and work my way down because they're all good. But Kristen talked about wondered how the whole effort got started. I think from kind of a legislative standpoint, like how did that come about to secure funds, and was it something that was initiated by producers? She also talks about or asks what brings farmers to the table, because it sounds like it's a significant time commitment, and I know everybody's busy and has lots of things that take up time.
Sure. Yeah, I can speak to a bit about more how the program got started, and then I'll let Tony talk from his perspective how what brings farmers to the table. So before the program got started in 2016, we had 4 existing watershed councils, farmer-led watershed councils up in the northwestern part of our state. And that was a UW extension project. They were trying out some different approaches to water quality improvement. And so that was, sort of a looser effort, I would say, to trying out this model of really engaging farmers in, how do we design the solutions in the watershed to address some of these things. So that project gained attention from different agricultural groups. And then around the same time, there's also a pretty large group here in the Madison area, the Yahar Pride Farmers. And so here in Madison, if you know anything about the Madison area, we've got 2 lakes. The city is situated right in between these 2 big, beautiful lakes, and they're not in the best shape though, just with a lot of input from agriculture and from urban inputs. And so Yahara Pride formed to try to be the face of, like, we are doing good things. Agriculture has certainly a piece to play in this, but we're also doing good, positive things. And so a lot of the ag groups, my understanding is a lot of the larger agricultural groups like Dairy Business Association, Wisconsin Farm Bureau, they were looking at these different models of showing farmers kind of in the driver's seat and kind of getting ahead of some potential legislation that could come down on farmers, and seeing that as a positive thing of, showing the good things and putting effort towards kind of being proactive. And so, again, it was a governor-led budget initiative, but it got a lot of support from some of those really heavy hitters that we think about when it comes to like lobbying for ag policy. So I think though that was a big part in getting it actually into legislation, getting it passed in the budget. And then it grew from there. So, and then I'll let you speak to, because it is a lot of your time that you put towards it.
Yeah, it is. It's just, I don't know. It's interesting to get to draw the farmers into it. You got to get a good core. And I know in our group, we got a good board of directors that are really involved in this and they're doing the practices. And some of the field events we have through the year to draw farmers that are big farmers or farmers that I doing that, that's not my realm. We try to pull some new piece of equipment to the field day or some incentive to get these farmers. Well, I'm going to go over, I want to see this, or I want to, or give them a free lunch. A free lunch always is a good time to get people to come, a neighbor that's on the fence that doesn't want to do practices, how you draw them into this. And just have fun with it. I mean, show them some different things and talk. And, nobody's trying to compete with anybody out there. We're just trying to do a better job and get a more healthier soil and everything. So it's been I don't know, and then all the groups we got going, we're all kind of in competition to see how much more we can do and what different, we always talk to other groups, see what they're doing on their different practices. And it's just been a good community. And with the EdCap here as a hub and getting us together, you need that continuity to someplace to come together or someplace to start these groups and continue to help them and collect data and just keep building forward. Without that, you'd scatter out and it just wouldn't happen. And in our group, we got 3 lakes in our county, and we have the Lakes Association participate in some of our projects too. And then they got to do in the summer in July, they got to take us on pontoon ride, the farmers, and show us their lake and show us their lake shore restoration. And we have a food, we have food catered, have a good deal noon, and they got to get their pontoons ready. And then we take a different lake every year. We got 3 lakes, we rotate back and forth. So that gives the farmers to communicate with the Lake Association people. Lake Association people got to show us what they're doing for their lakeshore restoration. Then in August, we got a cover crop showcase, or September it is. Late September, we got cover crops planted after wheat, and we invite them to come out some evening at 4:00, and we show them what covers are doing and why. It'll be by their lake, and it'll be somewhere that runs into their lake, and show them what these covers can do for them and help them and get them to participate. And then we go over to a bar and restaurant and give them hors d'oeuvres and drinks, and that gets a lot of participation. And we get the Lake Associations giving us money up to $20,000 that one lake has given farmers out in their area that water runs into their lake to help them put covers on. So it's a community effort, and you get the Lake Association people involved, and you get friendship with them and farmers back and forth. It's been a really good, community involvement, all these farmer-led groups all the way across the state.
So I'm going to skip down because I think a good follow-up to that is Alex's question about maybe kind of the kind of farmers that participate, in terms of leading farmers, sort of middle of the pack farmers. So what I'm hearing, and tell me if I'm correct, that I would say that the board that you have, like you and the other farmers who are planning events, may be sort of more advanced or more leading in terms of conservation practices and trying things out, but you're really trying efforts that bring in kind of a more mainstream crowd of farmers and to see if you can sort of hook people in and get ideas out there and practices on the ground. Is that accurate?
Yeah, well, in our group, I'm just, we got anywhere from a 3,700 acre grain farm that in the last 4 years went from completely regenerative side. There's no more tilling of soil. And we've got a small farmer, which is a younger farmer in his 30s, took over his grandfather's farm, was moldboard plowing 5 years ago. Now he's 100% covers, rotational grazing, and a little dairy there, and he's real proud of it. So we've got a good mix of everybody. We got dairies, we've got cash grain, we've got some vegetable farmers here and there. And it takes a group of them on your group to show that it does work. And when we got the variety like that, it can work on a big grain farm, or it can work on a little small 200 acre dairy farm that, he's totally impressed. He's got more time with his kids. He don't have to worry about any moldboard plow. He can get a 80 horse tractor instead of a 120 horse tractor now. So it does take the farmer group and to have those farmers on board with your group to help them instigate and, talk to other farmers.
I'm gonna. Sorry, Dana, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think with a lot of the other groups, it is like they are starting with, a farmer who's sort of an early adopter of conservation. They're like Tony, getting things going and trying to bring people together. But then I do think it grows into, like Tony's saying, a whole smattering of different farms that become involved. So, I think many of them now, I think you would testify to this, that some groups are reaching the point where, they've reached the early adopters, they're reaching, sort of some of the middle adopters, but getting to that next stage of reaching more and more of the farmers can sometimes be challenging, because then the more people you start reaching, you start to get down to those folks that are just have the personality that they don't want to change. And so once you start getting to those folks in the communities, maybe things slow down a little bit, but there's still momentum there, I guess.
Yeah, there's some out there that are, we just keep after them. We kind of give them a hard time, but it's slowly, we've got the early adopters now, but now my feeling is we got to educate. We got to put events on that explain why you shouldn't be doing tillage, getting the scientific. What convinced me years ago was under a microscope, living soil versus tilled dead soil. There's more living organisms in a tablespoon of soil than there's people on earth. So our soil is living. We don't have to be doing tillage. That's the first question I ask a lot of these farmers. Why are you doing tillage? And they really don't understand. And that's the part we've got to educate. And as we move forward, I want to get more education there and more, show them exactly on screen and get them educated, because the early adopters will jump in right away and they'll understand, they'll learn that. But these other ones have got to learn why we're not, why we're doing this.
So I'm going to jump to Kurt's question here. A lot of the groups tend to fund practices that aren't necessarily covered by NRCS programs. So can you give a couple of examples of that flexibility? So, respect to practices like cover crops, or you mentioned kind of a whole suite of practices that people are looking at.
Yeah, so we have some groups, just some examples. And I should clarify too. So like there are practices that we fund that NRCS does as well, of course. But we're not necessarily checking in on when are you planting your cover crop, or what seeding rate are you using, or things like that that come along with like a standard, not that we're just willy-nilly allowing them to put practices in the ground however they want, but like, for example, one year you put in cover crops in December, right? And got them to grow through the spring, and that wouldn't necessarily get paid for through NRCS. But trying some of those things that don't necessarily fit into a federal standard, but still, can potentially have good impact in the spring. We have a lot of groups that are doing different harvestable buffer programs, because here in Wisconsin, we do have a lot of animal agriculture. And so getting the benefit of a buffer to, protect a waterway, but then harvesting it to use the forage. So we have more and more groups that are doing things like that. We have groups that are trying out different biological additives to their soil to see if that works. I think NRCS has an interseeding standard now, but before they did, we were helping support groups doing that, aerial seeding, things like that, like different establishment methods that maybe weren't paid for through NRCS in the first place. Our DAPCAT program was paying for farmers to get some of that stuff done. So those are some things just off the top of my head that I can think of.
Yeah, there's a lot of different, like the Sand County Foundation's got funding. We've got that, they funded a project with water infiltration. We got probes on our farm and crossed, and for a 3-year program, monitoring a depth of 40 inches when it rains and everything continuously for 3 years. And then a neighbor next to us with full tillage has got to participate. And we can see the different how water infiltrate. The state, our university had a NOP grant this year, nitrogen optimization program. We got $250,000 in our group to go with 13 farmers to study, 2-year study on reducing nitrogen, sidedress nitrogen in corn projects. There's a National Wildlife has got funding. There's lots and lots of groups out there with funding that you can apply for to help support our groups. But like I say, the main kicker with the AdCap here is there's initial funding to get the group established. And then from there, it helps us build. That we could rely on that every year to continue us to help us to get that education and some projects done every.
Well, and I mean, just from what you guys are describing, it sounds like that's an incredible investment for the state because you guys have leveraged funds significantly, and also just I think maybe the producer-led aspect of this makes you really effective at engaging other farmers. You make it fun. You're having these peer-to-peer connections. And so I'm going to read Alex's question here, and then I'm going to kind of open it up so that just in case I'm not communicating things accurately or people have things that they'd like to ask, not in the chat. But with all of that, do you have a sense of how much reach, what percentage of farmers that you're reaching? And Alec notes, recognizing that it'll depend on the project area. But do you have kind of a sense? You probably know the number of farmers that attend your events, but do you have a sense of like kind of what that universe looks like? Who is attending, who's not attending, and goals that you set there?
Yeah, we do in our group. We try to have in our major events, we always get a form, and we have membership for our group too. And we do pretty well have the email address for every farmer in our county, like 500 and some. So when we send invitations out and that, and then we do have our annual events, we'll get up to 200 or 200 more farmers every year there. So we do kind of track, and we try to track how much we've got in covers and what's out there. So the tracking is kind of important to us, and then make sure you invite all the farmers. When you get this group going, you need to, get that email list or the list from your conservation department in your county or wherever of all the farmers, and just keep getting them emailed. And then, like I say, to get them to, informed of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And from a statewide perspective, that's a hard question that we've been trying to answer, but we do have the farmer membership numbers that are reported to us every year, but then we're not necessarily capturing the farms that are coming to field days, and they probably take back really good nuggets that they learned at the field day and change something on their farm, but maybe they're not necessarily engaged with the group, which is fine, but it's, that's still an impact that we're not necessarily capturing. So that's something we haven't really figured out how to capture, but, we look at the acres that the groups are impacting. And so, crested a million last year in 2022. There's 14 million acres of farmland in Wisconsin. So obviously we have a long ways to go, but for $1 million a year investment, that's a lot. And that's just what we're capturing and what's being reported to us. So those are questions that we still wrestle with at the department. How do we really get our arms around some of those social and community impacts to the other farmers that maybe aren't necessarily being counted on a membership sheet, but the impact is still there. If anyone has ideas, let us know.
I think that's something we struggle with universally. I know in my roles in Delaware and Maryland that we're always trying to be able to capture practices that are going on the ground. We've got really pretty good mechanisms for that, but in terms of, I think, understanding who is participating and who is not yet participating and how we get them, that's one of the reasons why these webinars and idea sharing is really helpful. So I'm going to open it up to people to come off of mute and ask questions in case there's anything that I've missed that I haven't interpreted correctly or that you want to get some more detail about. And Paula notes, please feel free to turn your cameras on as well. I see Kristen and okay. Well, I'll ask a question then in terms of challenges that you all have had. What are some of the the things that you've had to work through and overcome, and what are some of the things that you're still working on to make the program as effective as possible?
Just some of it, the challenges, we pay incentives out for covers and that, and this is a challenge of some of the farmers to fill the paperwork out, and also to have the personnel or the person to go and check on the fall. If we have a good county agent or county support from LandCon, they can go out and help support us. But it's challenge is trying to make sure they got the covers planted and that they're reporting correctly on a lot of the covers that we got to put on and that, and our programs, because you want to have documentation of the programs. That's kind of one of the problems or the stuff we got that's probably hard to do.
Yeah, I think many of the groups, a main issue that's reported to us is just administrative support. So having someone to help organize meetings and just, wrangle the cat, so to speak, and help with event planning, help with tracking farmer signups, like Tony said. The collaborator part of this is huge. I think, whether it's a county land conservation department or an extension agent or a nonprofit, that entity plays a huge role in helping the groups be successful, because they help them with that administrative load so that the farmers can do the outreach, talk to other farmers, but then also, continue to work on their farm. So, that is a part of it that is a struggle. In our code, we can only provide up to 25% of the funds towards administrative costs. And so that oftentimes doesn't necessarily cover the hours that go into some of these projects. And so those entities kind of have to figure out elsewhere how they're, going to cover those hours. A lot of times, because the goals are mutual, the farmers' activities benefit the organization and the conservation goals that they have, and then vice versa. So it's mutually beneficial in their relationship many times, but that doesn't mean that, it's still not an administrative load. So I think that's a big issue. And then one thing that can happen in some groups is, the farmer leaders can get tired and burnt out. And if there's not another farmer or set of farmers there to step up and take things over and keep things going, then a group can kind of fizzle out. And we've seen that happen sometimes. Most of the time, I think they find a way to transition into new leadership, but these are all volunteer hours. We do pay for farmer mentorship now, where we'll compensate farmers for their time to do different mentorship activities. But for a large part, this is all volunteer hours. The farmers aren't getting paid for it. And so, it's a tremendous amount, can be a tremendous amount of time outside of, all of the other things it takes from a farm to keep some of these groups going. So farmer leadership burnout is something that we've seen as well, and something we've been trying to provide different programming on and support on with some of that transition assistance at the state level, but it can be a challenge.
Yeah.
So I know we're coming to the end of our hour here, and so I see Kristen has a question, and then I'm going to turn it over to the two of you for any closing thoughts that you have, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. Kristen, what's your question?
So just thank you so much, first of all, for spending time with us. It's just been lovely to hear you all talk and just learn about this amazing work. I was intrigued when you all talked about the farmer-led watershed planning. Here in the Chesapeake Bay area, we have this big bay model, which really does not work for small watershed scale planning efforts. And I heard you say something about identifying like the hotspot areas. We've, been advised by our local experts that that's something we could probably be doing more of. So my question to you is, what tools are these producer-led associations using that they have found helpful to identify hotspots and come up with watershed-specific plans? And who's leading that? Is that like a University of Wisconsin-led effort? Is it a private consulting? Like, how's that working?
Yeah. So I can think of two examples, and unfortunately I don't know the tools that they use. So this might not be a very helpful answer, but so we have one group in the central part of the state, and they're located in a part of the state that's called the Central Sands. And so they have a lot of issues with nitrates in their groundwater. And they are working with Wisconsin Wetlands Association and the Wisconsin Potato and Vegetable Growers Association, because there's a lot of vegetable crops in that part of the state. And so they actually hired out a consultant to do, it's a series of different like land cover assessments, but their like a big focus of their project is hydrogeologic restoration. So how do they basically restore flow of some of the streams in the watershed, get water in the ground where it's supposed to, and just kind of restore the way the water moved through the watershed to help solve some of these nitrate issues in the groundwater. And so they actually, I think they used a portion of their grant funds to pay for that, but then I also think Wisconsin Wetlands Association kicked in a good portion of funds to pay for that, scientific analysis. And then the way that kind of looks with the group, then, there's a series of maps that were created through that study, and they're sitting down with the farmers and showing them, this is what this means. Look at this area in the watershed. Here's an opportunity for like a wetland restoration or something like that. And I can't speak to the exact specifics, but that's kind of like the concept that particular group used. And then, maybe less of like a scientific approach per se, but still an approach. I know another group, they work with their county, and the county ran what's called, I don't know if this is a nationwide tool or if this is just our Wisconsin DNR tool, but it's called an eval analysis. And so it's looking at, land cover, and a bunch of different other metrics, and basically shows like the hot spots then in the watershed of where there's high loading potential. And so showed the farmers that output map, but then using like the local knowledge of the farmers, just from like, them driving around to their different fields and just knowing their neighborhoods, sat down with a big old map and had the farmers identify like, where do we want to do stream sampling this year and for the next several years, and kind of co-developed a stream sampling plan, based off of that information, that analysis, but then just the farmers' local knowledge of, I'm curious about this area, or this area seems important to me, and had them pick out on a map, what they want to see. And then I believe they used producer-led funds to pay for the water testing then for that. So we don't have a lot of groups doing watershed mapping, but we do have some. There's not like a state tool that we promote for that.
Thank you for that.
Have you guys done anything?
No, not yet. That's something that's got to be worked on, but hopefully we can, as that moves forward, we'll be able to address those concerns, the groups.
Oh, thanks for the question, and that's really helpful. Any closing thoughts today?
Just appreciate the time that you all took to listen to us, and like Tony said, this is a model that we're really proud of here in Wisconsin. It's something that's been, I've heard from both farmers and conservation professionals that have been in the field for a long time, that this is something that's just been fun and positive to work on in terms of conservation. I think sometimes it's hard to see the difference that you're making in this field, and it's easy to get overwhelmed by just the gravity of some of the problems that you see with water quality. But this has been sort of a beacon of light for the state, of positivity. So it's been really successful here, and we're excited to help other states get something similar developed, because it works.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. Yeah, this, without their program, I don't think I wouldn't have a group, because to get the group started in that is it takes, it was a lot of work. I've did 7 years in this already, and trying to farm and do stuff. And that initial support is what kicked us in gear and got us going. You need that. And then the continuity and the meetings of other groups and talking to them and how to get established. You need that whole community to get that going. And with DADCAP stepping up and supporting us and getting this, that was the key of this whole, what Wisconsin's got going, moving forward with this. And then from there, we're just growing. So yeah, I speak, I get a lot of questions all over the different states all the time. I'm working on the Mississippi Watershed, involved in that, and I'm a bunch of other boards I'm on involved in the state. But it's a lot of fun. You talk to farmers, we know it's got to happen. Starting this up 7 years ago, would I ever thought we'd be at this point? No. I figured I've been doing regenerative agriculture for a long time. I farm with my brother. My brother doesn't really do any tillage. I do the work on the fields. And when I first couple of years got involved with this, he said that one night to me, I was out at the meeting this night, and all the farmers are talking about us. We can't be planting covers in the winter and have our fields green, and then in spring we're planting corn in these green fields. We can't do that. They're all talking about us, So it was kind of I felt kind of isolated that time way back then, but it's something that you need the support out there to get it going, and it makes you more energetic to do it. Another thing we do, we've got a website. If anybody's interested, it's Dodge County Farmers website. Go on our website, Dodge County Farmers for Healthy Soil. You can pick up, and we got a Facebook page that helps a lot. All our groups have got Facebook page or web pages that you can share and find out what we're doing and see our programs, what we participate in. And like I say, if anybody's out there needs help, I'm gladly always willing to, Zoom meetings, travel. I was supposed to go to Michigan this year, but that doesn't work out. I was going to help them out and get some farmer-led groups going. But the day they want me to come out there a week, we'll be putting our events together here in Wisconsin. So I'm more than glad to help the farmers. It's a fun time. You just got to take a few farmers to get it going, and get the support. Like I say, with DADCAP here, with Dana, she's got a phenomenal position here, and she's, it's fun when you work, when you know you're accomplishing something and you can enjoy your work, and you're doing something that's accomplishing something instead of just sitting here and putting programs on. So I got to give a lot of credit to Dana and the DADCAP's group and everybody.
Well, I see thank yous coming in on the chat, and I will echo that. And I really appreciate both your time to join us today and to prepare for it, and sharing the information about your program and your experiences with it.
One quick question. We had Jim Harbaugh come out the first year. Ray Archuleta knows him. They're dairy farmers in Pennsylvania, out there. He's a big farmer, and he's very active in the watersheds out there, Chesapeake Bay. Jim Harbaugh, and he came that time and spoke to us about their watershed initially, and he's been very adamant. They're a big dairy there, and they're very progressive in their cover crops and everything. So
I'm not familiar, but somebody else online might be. I stick pretty close to my states sometimes. But yeah, thank you again. And I just want to remind everybody, I know Paula's put it in there, that the recording for the webinar here will be sent out and also available on the Delmarva Land and Litter Collaborative's website, and to encourage everybody to sign up for the December 8th webinar on Lancaster's rapid stream delisting strategy. So Dana, Tony, thank you again so much. And if I missed anything, I'll kind of put one last shout out to Paula or Michelle to straighten me out. And if not, then I will wish everybody a good day, and just appreciate everyone's attendance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.